Greetings, programs, and hello, true believers. This is Martin, and welcome back for video number 3 in our series on the Milwaukee case of the secret. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. I don't know how much of a channel it'll be going forward, but feel free to join the 24 others for exclusive updates regarding the one and only true solution to the secret here in Milwaukee. The day we originally filmed this was a little challenging, with strong winds making some of the original audio unusable. And there were certain time constraints that we had as well. So the video is partially on location with original audio, as well as some in-home studio work. And please forgive us if you find the production values to be less than optimal. I'm a complete novice when it comes to video production, and my aptitude for monitored electronics is substandard. So I hope you'll be understanding and focus primarily on the intellectual content, and forgive audio deficiencies and choppy camera work. That's all on me. That's completely my fault. So today we're at Lake Park. However, this is not an endorsement for any version of the theory. If you've seen my other videos, you know what solution I endorse. It had not previously been identified in the mainstream, what we have dubbed the St. Stephan solution. We won't be talking about that solution in full detail today. Our primary focus is Lake Park, but I do encourage you to see those videos if you haven't already. Lake Park is the most prominent Milwaukee secret theory that exists. It has the most followers, the most variations, the most commentary, and the most coverage. But is it deserving of the intense attention that it receives? It appears that a belief in Lake Park for many supersedes the desire to uncover a casque, since these ideas are not mutually exclusive. If our true intention is to unearth the Milwaukee casque, then we must critically analyze the available information from proposed solutions, which in most instances includes and requires exposing faults, inconsistencies, deviations from the source material, and flaws of logic, even in regard to our own ideas. But given how many theories exist, Lake Park or otherwise, despite the existence of only one true answer, it seems as though most people are unwilling to do this, which is why after years of research and zero results, Lake Park is still a prominent focus. Conducting an objective analysis, it becomes apparent that Lake Park is not a suitable solution to the secret if your goal is to find Byron's true answer. Regardless of which version you prescribe to, at best, Lake Park is incredibly flawed, contains unverifiable superficial connections, is inconsistent and inaccurate when compared to the source material, uses puzzle devices that essentially serve no purpose, is missing key components unreasonable to ignore, and requires filling missing components with personal ideas. There are a handful of things that make you look twice, but there's not enough to make an entire solution out of this. What I believe is occurring is a lack of critical analysis, lack of objective observation, with a selective and superficial appreciation for the evidence, due in some cases to an underlying bias, and possibly falling for a red herring solution devised by Byron himself, to partially overlap his true solution in an effort to misdirect and confuse. It seems that we're trying to prove a point more than attempting to ascertain the truth, making excuses for inconsistencies and inadequacies instead of exposing them. And again, this is by no means a personal attack on anyone, but rather an objective and critical analysis of ideas, because if our true intention is to find a casque, we will not do so by following false leads under false pretenses, which is also why I have literally begged people to critically challenge the solution I have presented, with very few attempts made, most of which are easily explained with available information. While I'm doing my best to stick with the facts, so to speak, some may still find fault no matter what I say, if recent history is any indication. But please, do not misconstrue my passion for discovering the truth and unearthing a casque, which are my primary motivations. What I also find interesting is for some, they are able to justify belief in Lake Park because of all the problems. For a lot of people, they put it on Byron. It's Byron's fault. He was just a clueless buffoon who had no idea what he was doing and put some haphazard puzzle together, which I find interesting given he was a literary publisher with a master's degree in communication. I mean, this is what he does. He communicates. And it's not reasonable to me to assert someone with a master's degree can't properly communicate an answer to a puzzle he designed. It's far more likely that we are inadequately deciphering his level of communication, and especially when we're completely ignoring the language he was using, as well as ignoring entire lines. Now you have a different solution that comes along that makes sense of every line of the verse, down to accurately interpreted individual words, rendering the source language authentic versus ignoring it. In fact, we're not ignoring anything from the source material, taking the source material at its word to the utmost level versus manipulating it in such an extreme way that it doesn't make reasonable objective sense anymore, and instead using even the smallest details as a clue, as communication, to get you to the casque location. And for some, having a better solution that answers all of the questions, shows how each clue is serving a purpose to get you to the casque, and is making multiple connections to obscure references to further prove their validity, is deemed too complicated despite fixing many of the issues in communication that people complain about. On the one hand, people will complain that the puzzle is too ambiguous, and then on the other hand, ignore the devices in place to counteract the perceived ambiguousness. As I've said, people seem more focused on proving Lake Park than determining the truth of the secret. So that's what we're here to do today. Seek the truth and critically analyze this theory and its incredible number of variations, which should be a red flag unto itself. And of course, you may not agree with everything I say, and you may even believe you have reasonable answers for some of the challenges that I pose, which is fine. All I ask, if you decide to watch this video, please leave personal feelings at the door and apply a critical analysis of what is presented, possibly challenging what you personally believe, in an attempt to determine what is true. So as you can see, we're at what is referred to as the grand staircase. This is ground zero for every Lake Park solution, and what people often point to as an obvious indicator that Lake Park is correct. But I want to challenge your idea of the word obvious. Now, for starters, this would be interesting if this had the right number of steps, but it doesn't. The line in the verse references 92 steps, but there are 95 steps here. So that's the first problem. But even if you had the right number of steps, could you say that this is obviously what Byron was referring to? And the answer is no. Of course you can't, because it's not just about the individual reference, but rather what it's connected to. Evidence from the puzzle can only be considered obvious once you see what it connects to. Given that this is a subjective puzzle with an objective answer, Byron could have chose whatever reference he wanted to. Maybe he knew about the staircase and specifically avoided it because it was too obvious to instead focus on a far more obscure reference. So there is nothing that makes the staircase alone obvious. And once you enter the park, it should become clear how incoherent everything is and how nothing really makes any sense. So we're going to start at the staircase. I'll cover as much as is logical regarding the different schools of thought in terms of the solution. Then we'll backtrack and show you the beginning, starting at the UWM Mitchell building, onto the staircase. All right, and there's one other thing I wanted to mention before we start talking about the staircase here too. There is definitely there's an uneven standard when it comes to people's belief in Lake Park versus other solutions. So with Lake Park, there is no immigrant cultural connection to Lake Park whatsoever. You have two very minor connections to German culture, but that's it. There is not a significant German immigrant culture or any immigrant culture here at Lake Park, and we are in a city that is filled with historic landmarks and cultural centers. But Byron Priest focuses his puzzles on a cultural immigrant group. So why would we even be here in the first place? Why would we even consider Lake Park, given that it is missing a key component that is it's necessary? We can't have a solution without an immigrant group. Now you compare that to our solution to St. Stephan's, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a moment. But for our solution, we're told that the casque location, it has to be in a park, even though there's nothing credible that says that it has to be. But our solution is dismissed because the casque location is on a generic piece of land. but the source material that this is based on says specifically that it doesn't have to be in a park, that it can be somewhere else in the city. It says that you can find the treasure in your city or your local park. They make it a point to differentiate between the two. So in one instance, we are making excuses for a location that is missing a key and necessary component, and in another solution, we are holding it to a standard that is dismissed by the source material that it's based on. It's there's definitely a double standard when it comes to Lake Park. All right, so let's count these steps. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And of course, we're only counting the steps that we're ascending because that's what the source material is telling us to do. Otherwise, we'd have to count each of the steps we're making now. Okay? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, man, losing my breath, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. 95 stairs. So somebody tell me what from the verse suggests that 95 stairs is appropriate for 92. It's not. It's the wrong number. So now that we're up the staircase, oh, I need to catch my breath a second. So that should be conclusive enough that this is not the right location. The fact that there is the wrong number of stairs. I mean, that alone should debunk Lake Park altogether. But let's keep going, okay? So the next line of the verse is, after climbing the Grand 200, pass the compass. So immediately after we climb the Grand 200, we're supposed to pass the compass. So where is it? Now, this is where theories on Lake Park diverge a little bit, okay? You basically have two different schools of thought. You have one school of thought that goes to the left and goes over by the lighthouse. And then you have another school of thought that goes to the right and basically goes into the woods. So we're going to cover both of those. Let's start with the lighthouse. So the first thing is, it's nowhere near the staircase. I mean, you have to go looking for it. You actually have to walk pretty far in order to even get there. And you think about a lighthouse. So lighthouse is nothing like a compass. You know, a compass should represent north, south, east, and west, and it should get you someplace you're looking to go. And really the only connection that people are able to make is the name of the lighthouse, that it's called North Point. Is that really enough to conclusively state that it's the compass? I mean, the compass could be North Point Snack Bar down at the lake. It could be anything, but the other problem is it's not actually leading you anywhere that allows you to fulfill the lines of the verse. And in theory, a compass should be leading you in the direction you want to go. So we're going to go over there. All right, so we're walking over to the lighthouse right now, and I wanted to show you exactly how far away it is from the staircase, because that's not really being, represented by people. It's how far away this is, how many things you're actually passing too, which is really interesting. Because yeah, on the way we're passing a bridge. Now in the verse it says, below the bridge walk 100 paces. But if we have to pass the compass, we're passing the bridge before we get to the compass, and we're walking on the bridge instead of walking underneath the bridge. There is so much here that just doesn't make any sense. And there should be,
we should be able to look at the lion statue on the way too, because I want to talk about that. There's nothing that connects the lion statue to the woman other than Josh Gase's opinion. And again, you know, we're doing this on purpose just to show you exactly how far it is. And the other thing I can point out too, so if the woman is representing a lion statue, why is the painting showing her at the base of City Hall? There's nothing to justify that whatsoever, and it's actually far more confusing. Why is City Hall even in this painting in the first place if it has to do with Lake Park? There's no point to it because the rebus is identifying the painting as belonging to Milwaukee. So City Hall, in this interpretation, no matter which one of the versions you go with, serves absolutely no purpose. It's another huge red flag that we are in the wrong spot.
In our solution, City Hall serves multiple purposes, but most specifically, it orients you to the side of town you're on. The woman, who represents General Kosciuszko, is shown at the base of City Hall, at the 7 o'clock position, looking east to the Jewel. Compare that to Kosciuszko Park itself, which is south of City Hall, at the 7 o'clock position, with the casque location to the east.
And why is Byron Priest picking a location in an affluent neighborhood that's completely devoid of all the things that he focuses on in his puzzle? Yet another thing that doesn't make any sense. Why is the woman dressed the way she is? Why is she wearing a ragged cloak in an affluent neighborhood? So many things we can talk about. And why also can we not make more significant connections to the painting? You know, there should be more visual clues that's telling you you're in the right place. But all we can really do is make these very circumstantial connections to trees and red balls. And that's about it.
So we're approaching the Walcott statue. Some people attempt to assert this as the proud tall fifth in the location of the casque. The use of the word proud seems a little generic, but sure, we can say a military figure is proud. Doing some light research, I struggled finding a fifth reference to the general, although I know one exists, even if it's obscure, possibly a reference to his military rank. If you know what this is, please feel free to leave a comment. As far as the statue being tall, my question is tall compared to what? Height is relative, and the general is not the tallest thing in the park. So how are any of these words helping you distinguish the General Walcott statue from anything else, given how subjective and generally they're applied, or generically they are applied? In addition, if we are interpreting the lighthouse as the compass, we would have to backtrack to the General Walcott statue to make it the proud tall fifth. But what from the source material is suggesting that we do this? The verse tells us we are supposed to go under a bridge and travel southeast over rock and soil. So how does this, or anything else, get us back to the Walcott statue if we are already at the lighthouse, which is oriented southwest compared to our theoretical casque location? So here is the General Walcott statue. And what's interesting is if you do some research, you'll discover that there are only 2 equestrian statues in all of Milwaukee. The other one is General Kosciuszko at Kosciuszko Park.
Alright, so we are getting close to the lion statues here. And again, look at how far the staircase is away from the lighthouse. You have to pass all these things. And now some people have tried to suggest that you have to rearrange the lines of the verse to make it work. And in other instances, in other confirmed solves, you have had to do that. But what in the painting or the verse is telling you to do that? We can't just be, doing whatever we want. We can't base things on our own ideas and base things on a preferred solution. It has to be based on something from the source material, or it really just it doesn't have any relevance. So since we're here, let's look at the lion statue. And some people do make a connection to the lion statue being the proud tall fifth. I find that really interesting. So, lions do travel in pride, so there is some logic involved in that. But how is this tall? Someone explain to me, because we'd have to really gloss over that word if you're going to assert that the lion statue is the proud tall fifth. First of all, it's not remotely the tallest thing in the park. And second of all, we can't say that it's tall because it's at a higher elevation. You know, and that's about the only argument that you could really make. But I mean, good grief. My grandmother, she was 4'8". You can't say she was tall if she lived in Colorado, in Denver. You know, that doesn't really make any sense. You know, this is not tall. So there's not enough evidence to say that this is the proud tall fifth. And I don't see enough evidence to say that this is the woman either. What else is making the connection? But let's keep going. We still got to get to the lighthouse here. And there is apparently a connection to one of the lion statues and the number 5. I think it's a relatively obscure connection, but like I said, there's really not enough there to make a definitive confirmation that that's really anything. All right, so now we're rolling up on the lighthouse. So, you know, we already talked about how the, lighthouse really isn't logical to be the compass. And the other thing, it says you're supposed to pass the lighthouse. So what direction is it that you're going in to pass the lighthouse? Now, I suppose, we can, there is another bridge over here. So I suppose you can, make that argument that you are, continuing straight past the lighthouse over the bridge. But the problem is you're supposed to be going under the bridge. So that's the first issue. Now, I saw one interpretation where somebody is trying to say, actually you're supposed to read it, pass the compass and reach the foot of the culvert below the bridge. So basically it's a reference to a culvert below the bridge, even though you're walking on the bridge, which that serves no purpose. I mean, the only purpose is really to try to make it fit your preferred solution. How is that really leading you anywhere? And where is this so-called culvert? I mean, there really isn't one. So let's keep going here.
Important to note also is the definition of a culvert. A culvert is a specific structure that is built to allow drainage or water flow. Asserting that an open-air stream or drainage ditch is the culvert is not accurate. In fact, there is actually a process called deculverting or daylighting, which removes the tunnel to restore an open-air waterway. So to assert that the areas below any of the bridges is a culvert is a personal interpretation not supported by the source material or an accurate definition of the word. Okay, even if we're trying to justify staying on top of the bridge, not even going on the bridge that is past the compass, where are we taking the 100 steps? What from the source material is verifying your starting point? And if we are then traveling those 100 paces southeast over rock and soil, this should take us away from the intended casque locations. Most lake park interpretations on this side of the park, people don't pass the lighthouse and go on the bridge and instead assert that their casque location is at a lion statue, the General Wolcott statue, or a random tree by the cliff. So why in the world are we rolling up on the compass but not actually passing it? Why are we not continuing south like the puzzle seems to suggest? Of course, if you say on the path you're traveling southwest and not southeast, and removing yourself from all interesting landmarks in the park. Okay, so now we are finally at the lighthouse after all of that traveling. We have already discussed the various reasons why the lighthouse is not remotely logical to be the compass. And it has mostly to do with how it connects to the rest of the puzzle, which for me is one of the more important principles in determining the validity of interpretations, because you can make face value coincidental connections to virtually anything. But if you struggle to create substantial connections to other puzzle devices, what have you really proven? And you can see this principle at play in Lake Park, especially with the Proud Tall Fifth, interpreting this line as a lion statue, General Wolcott, various trees, or the water tower further south. These are really just ideas, with no solid verification from the source material. These are precisely the type of things, if our intention is to find a casque, to challenge and filter out as possibilities instead of making excuses for inadequate connections and inserting personal ideas to fill in the blanks. I found a proposed solution that exemplifies this principle that is worth discussing.
All right. So, and of course, they use the lighthouse as being the compass in that solution. But then they also say that the first young birch is also the lighthouse, and give basically no reason other than the lighthouse is is the color white, and that's really it. They're taking the 100 paces that you're supposed to walk, and walking from the lighthouse to their preferred location, to this vista that is actually in front of me over here. And there's really, again, there's nothing from the verse or the painting that's telling you to do this. Anytime you're injecting your own ideas, you're missing it. You know, there is enough information here that it's being communicated where the casque is. We don't need to fill it in with our own ideas. If you're filling it in with your own ideas, you're in the wrong place. You know, there is a solution where, you know, it says below the bridge walk 100 paces, and there's a solution where you can actually walk below a bridge 100 paces. You can't do that here, because even if you go underneath one of these bridges, you know, for the most part there are stairs there. And one of the solutions on the other side of the park over here, they're taking 100 paces from under the bridge, but you're not going the full 100 paces, and you're walking on stairs, which you can't take a pace on a stair. So we really need to, you know, reject these ideas that are not based on what's being told to you from the source material. You know, the other problem is, you look at the first young birch, you know, people are ignoring the words first and young. Because if you're trying to make a connection to a birch tree, how would you ever know which birch tree is first and young compared to the other? It's completely subjective. And if you're trying to connect the first young birch to this, how is this first and young? It really doesn't make any sense. But there is a solution. Even though people don't like the reference that's being made, there's a solution that makes sense out of that. And that's what we have to remember. It's a subjective puzzle with an objective answer. Byron could have picked anything he wanted to, and oftentimes he likes to pick the things that are more obscure. Now, and Lisa, if you could turn around here. So this Vista solution takes past 3 staying west, is going past 3 trees, but staying west of the cliff, okay? Now, there's some logic in the sense that staying west can either mean that you're going west or continuing west. But if it can mean that you're staying west of something. But if you're staying west of something, what is that thing? Where is the painting or the verse telling you what it is? In what direction are you even going in? Why can't we be going south past these 3 trees and completely miss the vista over here? And it's because that is the location that they want to get you to, is to that vista. So they are inserting their own ideas to make it work. In comparison, wouldn't it be more clear and make more sense to travel south then east over Mineral Street, your rock, and Greenfield Avenue, your soil, approach a building on 2nd Street whose founder relates to the terms first young and birch, then continue past 3rd Street when the first says past 3 staying west? It alleviates all of these erroneous rules we are applying to try to make Lake Park fit, and simplifies the process and resulting communication. All right, so then what they assert is, on a proud tall fifth is referring to a tree, and they're making a connection to the painting where it shows the 4 trees, you know, kind of all grouped together. And of course, that's a very common design in nature, is to have those kind of 4 offshoots of a tree all together. So which one of these trees are you comparing it to? It could really be any of these trees. It's again, it's such an ambiguous connection. And then at its southern foot, okay, so that would basically put you on the hill over here. So we're going to be digging at the base of a tree on a hill, and that's where the casque location is. Doesn't really make any sense. Yeah, trees are tall, okay, what makes them proud? It doesn't really make any sense. Now, what would make sense is if you're, and of course, again, there's no cultural connection to any of this whatsoever. There's no connection to the German culture. Now, what would make sense is if you're in a German neighborhood at a German church on 5th Street, and it's the tallest thing on that side of 5th Street because 5th Street actually ends right at that place. And, you know, if you're proud of something, you want to display it, right? You want to put it out in the open where everyone can see it. So guess what? That church, St. Stephan's, is right off of the highway where everybody can see it. Tell me that makes less sense than connecting the proud tall 5th to a random tree. Again, where is the source material leading you to that? It's really not. A few more things to note before we move on. What some people assert is that the solution must be on the lighthouse side of the park because there's nothing of note, no landmarks, on the other side of the park. But why aren't those same people criticizing Lake Park in general for having no German immigrant culture in a city that's full of it? Seems like an uneven standard. Here's a question. How is the painting being used in a way that makes it indispensable? Most versions of Lake Park are either focusing on the verse and ignoring most of the painting, or making a few more significant connections to the painting while ignoring many lines of the verse to do it. The book says you can only find the casque deciphering clues from both the painting and the verse. So how are we using the painting in any way on the lighthouse side of the park to reveal the casque location? And even if you thought you could, how are you using the source material to verify that the image you're choosing is directly related to the casque location? Okay, so now we're going to backtrack back to the staircase and talk about the other school of thought when it comes to the compass. Some people believe that the compass refers to these Mason compass symbols that are on the street lights. Relatively logical. But here's the problem. These compass symbols are on all of the street lights, or nearly all of them. So which one? Because the verse says to pass the compass. It doesn't say pass the compasses. It doesn't tell you which one. It doesn't tell you what direction you're going in. So where are we following these? It doesn't really make any sense. Now, and of course we're not at the staircase right now. We're doing this to kind of prove the point that we're not anywhere near the staircase. There's the compass symbols over there in the street lights as well as over here. But the one that's immediately to your right, and it seems like most people, they follow the path to the right if they're going to assume that the Mason's symbols are the compass. But that street light actually doesn't have the symbol on it. And it's hard to say if at any point in the last 40 years that it did, but we don't have definitive information to show that even had that symbol on there in the first place. Now you can kind of make an argument. So if you look at the painting, you can kind of make an argument for following to that side of the park based on the red balls. Right where the staircase is, just beyond that, there is also a bocce ball court, so people make the connection to the red balls. So you can follow those red balls to that side of the park, and that kind of makes sense. But we're not really making proper sense of the verse as we're doing that. And it's interesting because looking at the symbolism, the red balls are leading into the key. Well, people make a connection to the key before you get into the park. Actually, the staircase makes kind of an interesting key shape down there. But in theory, it's out of order, so it doesn't really make any sense. Then we have to ask, what about the other items in the rebus? So we use the red balls, the key, and the millstone. But what about the walking stick and the flower? Because if you're going to use some of the rebus items, why not use all of the rebus items? And while the theories that focus on the Locust Street Ravine Trail use a couple more images from the painting, what about all the other images and details that we aren't using? What about the dome structure on the far left of the painting? Why do the red balls have the number 5 in the shadowy parts? Why are the rebus objects paired together by color? Why is the flower the 5th object with 5 petals and a blurry 5 beneath it? There are so many questions to details that have to have meaning and yet have no explanation. But there is a solution that can explain all of that.
So you can follow the path around to Locust Street Ravine Trail, which halfway makes sense, but of course now you're on the side of the park with nothing but literal references to rocks and dirt and trees. There is no German culture and no significant landmarks. The painting does show an image that kind of looks like a locust, but it is circumstantial and not conclusive, as that shape has been theoretically identified as many things. So now the 100 paces are also hard to figure out over on this side because you're given no definitive parameters. You either have to walk the 100 paces as you're going southeast over rock and soil, or you have to start under the bridge. Starting under the bridge is problematic because you're on stairs, which defeats the purpose of a pace. He should have said steps because then a stair or a flat surface can yield steps. And even just counting them as steps, you don't get a full 100. And where is the first young birch? How are you passing 3 staying west? Finding the letter from the country, or the proud tall fifth, because you're already at the intended casque location within about 70 or 80 steps starting from under the bridge. The intended casque location for this version is an old sewer head that looks like the millstone, and in some cases this vent pipe. Some people seem really obsessed with this vent pipe, like they've been spending too much time near it. But they say that the candy cane shape in the woman's elbow is this vent pipe, which I see no definitive resemblance. The shape isn't close enough, and what do we have here that's not really anything more than just circumstantial? The other thing I'd like to point out, and some people will find this a little nitpicky, but the millstone in the painting is definitely a millstone, given its identification with the whole rebus, which spells out Milwaukee. So then why would we believe that something that isn't a millstone is representing it just because they look similar? Again, seems really circumstantial in a puzzle full of ambiguous references that must have very specific, verifiable answers for us to really draw a definitive solution. So now let's start from the beginning. So we do start at a Mitchell building with 3 stories, visible from across the street. The interpretation of the beating of the world is Kenwood Avenue because of its connection to a radio company. It's a very odd reference that has no Milwaukee or cultural connection, and the line makes it sound like there's an extra sensory experience here and not just referencing a street name. At a distance in time, we have no idea what that is. From 3 who live there is 3 streets of 3 Milwaukeeans as you're walking straight down Kenwood. And you actually pass a 4th street in order to pass all 3 of these streets named after Milwaukeeans. At a distance in space, again, no idea. People often attempt to assert that this is a throwaway line because they can't figure it out. From woman with harpsichord silently playing refers to a single street, Marietta Avenue, which does reference an Italian painter who did a self-portrait with herself and a harpsichord. But again, it's a weird reference with no connection to Milwaukee or the source immigrant culture, just another street name to identify 3 different concepts from the verse. So next, to step on nature, we are again going straight and walking on the paved path of the park, not actual nature. Cast in copper, you guessed it, another street name, this time referring to Lincoln Memorial Drive. Now, a Lincoln reference should not be automatically assumed to also be referencing copper. Seems odd, but it is possible, but it would also be more believable if there were more significant connections elsewhere in one of these theories. And I ask, where are there any visual references to this first half of the verse in the painting? And why would Byron focus so much of his effort on street names in a city filled with more interesting things? Now compare this to an alternate solution that has relevant cultural references throughout the puzzle, has significant and verifiable visual references in the painting throughout the puzzle, with specific references to both the starting point and the ending point. But alas, it seems more people prefer Lake Park, which I will never understand that. Okay guys, so that's what I have for you today. In the spirit of objectivity, if I missed a piece of evidence that is worth mentioning, or you have an intelligent objection you would like to present, feel free. There are so many variations, so many alternative ideas, and so many convoluted details that it's hard to keep up with. So there may be something worth discussing in further detail. I, however, will not tolerate name-calling, accusations of insanity, or threats of cyberstalking. So if you can't control these impulses, you will be blocked. It seems this subject inspires a lot of emotion, and up to this point I've been pretty lenient, but I'm definitely at the threshold for what I'm willing to tolerate. So if you can manage a thought-provoking comment versus generic statements, I may include them in a follow-up video if I have enough meaningful evidence to discuss. Let's make this about evidence more than opinion, because only evidence will get us to a casque, or help us eliminate erroneous possibilities. And please, if anyone has any connections, whether it's in the media or city/county government, that may be able to help me get this done, I'm still looking for help to do this legally. So hit me up on my Facebook group page, Revealing the Secret in Milwaukee. Until then, thank you for watching.